Blood Brothers podcast, a Five Pillars production.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there, and welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain, and my co-host,
Aki Hussain. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Before I introduce today's very esteemed guest, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show on all the major audio platforms, Spotify, Google, Apple, and everything else. And of course, if you're viewing in on YouTube, remember to not be cheeky and just watch it without subscribing. Like the video, share the video, and leave a comment. Today's guest is someone who is a dear brother of mine, someone who I have not spent enough time with, but have followed closely enough to know that his presence on this podcast has been long overdue. He is an imam at the Redbridge Islamic Centre. He's an author at Islam 21C, and he is an instructor at Sabil. And he's none other than our dear brother, Ustadh Asim Khan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam to both of you, mashallah. Jazakallah khair for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Barakallah people coming on to the
It is
podcast.
overdue though, for sure.
It is
Absolutely.
overdue.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's probably more my fault than yours.
I'll tell you something though. It's been about 3 years since I last saw you. I know we've had 2 years of lockdown.
Yeah.
You're looking good, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah,
Yeah. Lockdown can go either way, you know.
It can go,
can.
but it
So
went,
most people, it's gone the wrong way.
it went the good way for you, alhamdulillah. How's things?
Very good, alhamdulillah, yeah. I'm doing well.
When was the last time you did a podcast?
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's why we
It's
wanted
been
it.
a while, yeah.
But there was a little run that you did. You did quite a few podcasts.
I did, yeah. I think the podcast world kind of exploded at that time.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you know, when you're thinking about what da'wah should look like, it should move with the times. And so therefore I thought, yeah, just do some podcasts.
And I had to give it. Yeah, when I saw you appearing, mashallah, on all the major Muslim podcasts, I was. Is there such a thing as being pleasantly jealous? Does such a thing exist?
Yeah, of course there is.
So I'm there thinking, okay, Ustadh
Happy
Asim's
for your
fine.
brother.
I'm happy, but I'm like, when am I gonna have it on? So I had to. We always allow a healthy space
Yeah.
before someone else comes on. This is a policy of ours, but it is long overdue, and thank you for honouring us for coming
No, it's
on.
my pleasure. It is my pleasure.
Ustadh, we've had a kind of a running theme. Me and Aki did a podcast on men's mental health, and what we kind of regard as masculinity. There was mixed feedback. Many agreed with us, many disagreed with us. Then with the brothers, brother Muhammad Yahyawi, I think that podcast may come before or after yours. We also spoke about masculinity, and
Yep.
you know, obviously he came from a wrestling and contact sports point of view. But today I've brought you on to kick off today's podcast about this concept of masculinity. Now, masculinity is an English term, and I guess the closest.
And it comes with this Western understanding and meanings when the word is used.
And we know, and you know, as someone who's a very senior and versed student of knowledge, that words are vehicles to meaning. It's very important. Like, you can't have an English word to now represent an Arabic or Shari'i term. You can't do this. It can be problematic. But the closest thing I could find in the Quran and Sunnah was when Allah refers to Muslim men as being qawwam,
Yeah.
over their women. Can you please elaborate, first and foremost, what does this term qawwam mean? And where does Allah cite it?
So it's a good topic, and masculinity today is obviously a hot topic as well.
Very hot.
And with that, there's lots of loaded, assumed meanings. So it's good to talk about the terms. And in Arabic, qawwam is definitely up there, but also rujula, which means manhood, and muru'ah, which means chivalry. They're all kind of Islamic terms that you find in this discourse. But I'll tell you what's interesting is that the need to speak about what it means to be a man is in and of itself quite alien to Islam. Because in the Quran and in the Sunnah, we don't find verses saying, okay, men, this is what you're supposed to be like, and women, this is what you're supposed to be like. It's part and parcel of the fitrah that Allah has given us, that we have our intrinsic traits and qualities as men and as women, and it's not something that needs to be spelt out. In fact, sometimes when you spell those things out, that's when you get the controversy, and that's where you get the tension as well. Because there's confusion now, and because of the fact that even Muslims are confused about, okay, in terms of my rights as a husband, for example, or in terms as a father, or just what it means to be a good Muslim man living in this day and age. Could you define that for me? What does that look like? What are the qualities? So maybe just for that sake, we can have a conversation. But really and truly, a sensible person should realize that, you know what, this is a bit of a silly topic, to be honest. I mean, it's assumed we know. I can't remember my mum and dad, or my dad talking to somebody else saying, you know, what is masculinity? What does it mean to be a man? He never taught me.
Never.
What it meant to be a
No,
man.
we
I don't
never
know
had to
about
sit
any
down.
of you, like, you know,
100%.
listen, son, now that conversation comes where I tell you
100%.
what it means to be a man. And even though Allah hasn't blessed me with a son, I hope that I would never have to have that conversation. And if I did, it would be with this hand. No, I'm joking. It wouldn't be with this hand. It would be just to clarify things, you know, because of the corruptive nature of the modern day discourse.
So, boom, and I'm very glad you put that very important caveat there. Perhaps those conversations didn't happen with our fathers because, number one, the issue that we're seeing now wasn't so prevalent or apparent then,
Or didn't exist at all.
or didn't exist at all.
Especially in the world that we live in at the time.
So, if you look at, let's say, Ustadh Asim, is your origin Pakistan?
Yeah.
And when did Uncle come here?
67, 68.
So exactly
Same as dad.
like the same as our dad,
Yeah.
right? So that wasn't a problem then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That and I would say these problems first started emerging, I would say, after 2000s, right? Where certain lobby groups, certain ideas were becoming more prevalent, more normative, more mainstream in popular culture, introduced into schools. So we're now in a situation where, as you rightly said, the circumstances has necessitated for us to now talk about it.
Yeah.
So please, can we have that conversation today?
No, for sure. I do want to speak about that. And if we go for the word qawwam, taken from the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that men are this qawwam over women. What it does, it kind of skews the conversation because our understanding is rooted in the relationship vis-a-vis a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really the case. Manhood or masculinity revolves around the interactions we have as brothers, as part of chivalry and manhood, that we conduct ourselves in a particular way between brothers and between women and between how I treat animals, how I treat relations, how I behave with Allah as a man also has its also has a standing as well. Mm-hmm. So what it means to be a man is not just how you treat women, it's how you live your life in the way you interact with those that are important to you in your life. And number one is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first point. The second thing I want to say is that as a man, defining it based on modern day liberal values is extremely problematic for a Muslim.
Of course.
Because it's like a pendulum. Now, one day it's like this, and the next day it's like that, and that will lead to confusion, and it will lead to not finding satisfaction. And you know, if you look at the covers of magazines, what does that man look like? You know, the Gillette, the best a man can get. That type of clean shaven, heavily built, you know, deep voice.
Looks
black
like
man.
a toy.
Yeah, like a toy.
Like an action
But
man.
it's unattainable, firstly. And secondly, it's fleeting. Maybe once in your life it'll look like that.
Now they want dad bods. Dad bods are quite popular now.
What's a dad bod?
Like a dad body.
A bit of a did.
A dad body. Seen it. Someone's got a bit of a
Yeah,
did.
a bit of a did
You know, it's
is
a
now
bit
in
hair. It's a
fashion.
bit hairy. Lets himself go
That's
a
a
little
thing.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things
Wow.
There's a strand of attraction towards men now where they are not so concerned about how they appear in the kind of like typical
Right.
attractive
But
man.
It's like the counter current, basically.
Yeah, but as you
Yeah.
said, things are constantly
Exactly.
shifting.
Yeah.
In a liberal world, moral goalposts and even definitions are constantly shifting and changing.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we could do is then say, okay, forget about that. Let's throw out ideas or values that we believe have substance that we should attach ourselves to as men, and say, okay, that's what it means to be like as a man. But I think that's not even useful either, because between us we'd come to some disagreement on certain things, and then you'd be like, well, in certain cultures it doesn't work for them, they're like this, etc., etc. So in reality, the best definition of what it means to be a man is to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And whoever follows the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ will automatically be a real man. And every woman that follows the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ according to what relates to a woman will be automatically become a real woman. And that is where we should start the conversation. Because then there's no arguments amongst Muslims, isn't it, about these things? Because some of the areas the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ have kept silent. Yeah, maybe some things like fashion and diet and XYZ. So there's space there for you to adopt things according to your dispensation and your personality. But then there's other things that have clearly been spelt out, or there's guidance been given, which you need to adopt, even if it goes against your personality traits. And the more you do that, the more you will fit the ideal model of what it means to be a Muslim man or woman.
Can you give us an example of some of these things which are not non-negotiables, let's say? So I know you refer to things like fashion or diet or things that could be urfi. I get that. Yeah. But what are the non-negotiables when it comes to define gender roles? Or
well, let's make it very easier for the purpose of the question, because it's very broad, isn't it? And Ustad, you, for the sake of uniformity, absolutely correct in that following the Sunnah of Rasulullah alayhi salatu is uniformity. There you go. Here's your answer. Yeah, you want to see what it's like to be a real man or to be a real woman?
Exactly.
Let's look at the life of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. If we give an example to Ustad of what examples or what lessons can we take from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with respects to how men are with female relatives, or how they are in search of a spouse? Because that's an example we can look at now, where there are real questions and real dilemmas and real challenges and confusion that exists for Muslim men, and whether they're being manly enough, or whether they're compromising certain values, or whether they're just confused. That makes sense. Because asking Ustad,
we're gonna have a sub debate now between the brothers.
Asking Ustad, give us an example from the Sunnah of how to be a real man. Where do we start?
Exactly.
Do we start in Makkah? Do we start in Medina?
Yeah, there's so many things we could mention as a response to that, but it might not lead to a conclusive type of understanding on this subject.
Surely when we say
or do we cite problems?
Okay, no, hold on. Even if we were to talk between Islamic movements or du'at, right, or mashayikh or ulama of different persuasions, or revivalist groups, or even this conversation here, I'm not saying that this was your purpose, your aims or your purpose by any means. When you say you go back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, everyone can say that.
Sure.
And those differences will still remain, right? So I guess what I'm asking you is, if we were to, let's say, perhaps, okay, fine, maybe this may work.
We have to give examples.
Right? Yeah. So a massive issue is, especially for Londoners who are married, to survive with the price of rent or mortgage, both spouses need to work. I don't know about non-South.
It's common.
I don't know about non-South Asians and non-Desis, but I can at least speak for Pakistanis, Gujis, and Bengalis, right? Yeah. That if they are a couple renting or mortgaging in London, nearly always both of them need to work.
Yeah.
In an ideal situation, or like, because the example of Khadija radiallahu anha is always cited as to why a woman can be an entrepreneur and be a businesswoman, and she
pursue those things,
be successful.
Right?
But then it's conveniently forgotten that her servant boy, or she had a servant who used to attend some of the business meetings on her behalf. That Khadija radiallahu anha respected the norms and the urf of her time. That it was not normal for women to attend those meetings amongst predominantly male merchants. Am I correct in this? Yeah. And in fact, one of the requirements or needs of her wanting Prophet ﷺ's services was for him to be an advocate and representative during her business.
That's right.
Yeah. As opposed to what's presented to us by certain groups is that that's just the position. She can work and she can have business and be in certain environments. Now some will say, look, at a mushkila we need our wives to work.
Yeah.
We can't survive. Right? It's not ideal. So she has to go work in an environment which we wouldn't want our women to work in. Whether it's male dominated or non-Muslim dominated, or there's certain,
or busy requires a lot of travelling, and exposure to the public.
Or the fact that she might earn more than him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from a prophetic point of view, what is the position, from your understanding, of women working?
Actually, let's put that on ice for a moment, yeah?
Okay.
Because
are we going to return to it?
We'll come to it for sure, 100% inshallah. But just trying to think further, okay, because, when I said, what does it mean to be a man? You say, okay, the ideal man is the Prophet ﷺ, and therefore we can take him as an example. And that's not a cop-out. that is actually our basis.
Absolutely.
And to be
100%.
honest, you will
Absolutely.
not find a better starting point in this conversation than the one I mentioned.
Let me defend myself slightly. Wallahi,
No,
I didn't mean
it's
that.
fine, it's fine.
But what I meant was that it's such a commonly cited answer. We know it's the truth, but it means different things to someone else.
That's true as well.
For
Yeah,
example,
yeah, yeah.
you'll hear, my dear husband, why are you not washing and cleaning? The
Prophet ﷺ used to help his
Probably
family.
to help his family.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so I'm saying
He would,
that
he would mend his own clothes.
yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
so I'm
So
just
now you
saying
should
that-
become a seamstress.
yeah, or Darzi, you understand? That's what I'm trying to
You know?
say.
Yeah. No, I
all right.
totally
Go on,
understand.
sorry, go on.
But we can build on that though.
Okay.
So we can go further. We can say, okay, so that's one example. But let's look at the Quran as well. We've got heroes in the Quran, and we've got female role models in the Quran as well.
Absolutely.
What things does Allah celebrate in those individuals? Because what Allah celebrates in those individuals are the things that we should look to as the definition of what makes a good man and a good woman.
Mhm.
That seems like a sensible thing to do.
Boom.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
So if we go for women celebrated in the Quran, we find Maryam alayhi salam
Salam.
and Asiya are probably the top two.
Yes.
Like in Surah Tahrim, there's half a page dedicated to Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. And then we've got the whole surah, Maryam.
Of
right?
course.
And the mother of Maryam is also part of that story as well. So if I ask you two now, okay, let's take them one at a time. I don't know how much you know about Asiya, but when I say her name, what qualities come to your mind?
It's interesting that you mentioned Asiya because Aki mentioned the story of Asiya
Oh.
in our episode about men's masculinity and mental health.
The
And
previous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another one. In the context of her sabr, in the context of her devotion to Allah Azawajal, in the context of her role as a servant of Allah,
Good. Yeah.
her forbearance, and as the wife of Fir'aun,
Yeah.
and the contrast between the two. Someone, Fir'aun, who is Fir'aun, a symbol of evil,
Symbol of you, yeah.
and Asiya alayhi salam, who was seen as an example of steadfastness and worship and devotion to Allah Azawajal. So those are the two examples and the contrast, if you like.
Great, yeah. So piety, belief, patience. Ibn Ashur, one of the great commentators of the Quran, he said that when Fir'aun found out without any doubt that his wife was a believer in Musa alayhi salam, that he tortured her to death. And when he was torturing her, or when he had someone torture her, she saw a vision of a palace made out of a pearl in paradise, as she asked Allah, make for me a house in paradise next to you. So what I found fascinating about that is she already lived in a palace. She's the wife of Pharaoh. She had the world at her feet.
the best palace.
The best
on
palace,
a worldly
yeah.
point of view.
Yeah, even probably the great civilization at that time and for many years to come. And yet she renounced material wealth for faith. And she put it all on the line and she suffered for that. And, she, as a result, she became a heroine for all humanity. So that's Asiya. Okay, so maybe her faith and her patience and her piety. Okay, what about Maryam alayhi salam? What comes into your mind when we mention Maryam? Trying to think more about the Quranic narrative as well.
Maryam alayhi salam was more to do with her
Chastity.
Good. Chastity, yeah.
her tawakkul in Allah, right? The fact that she followed the orders from Allah and believed in the outcome. What else?
Piety,
else?
devotion. Again,
Piety,
piety.
What is her
and-
greatest contribution?
Was giving birth to Isa alayhi salam.
Exactly.
A
The
mother,
fact that
being a
yeah,
mother.
Being a mother.
Yeah.
The fact that she's the one who brought this incredible human being, Isa alayhi salam, guide to humanity, into this world. So number one, that she went to the utmost extent in protecting her chastity, and the fact that she raised this great child. In fact, both those two things are connected, because imagine the shock when she's the one thing that she's really good at as growing up as a young woman is protecting her chastity, being pious, and then her test is she becomes pregnant, and everyone's going to start pointing fingers,
Yeah.
and the shame that would come with that. So Allah tested her in the most,
The worst possible thing
basically in the
in
area
terms of
that,
society.
exactly, in the thing that she was really good at, Allah turned that into
In the hottest way.
Yeah.
To put it in very simple terms.
yeah. And even in the Quran, she does in when she's giving birth, she says, "Ya laytani mittu qabla hadha." if only I was dead before this happened to me. It's a very explicit and shocking statement. Allah mentioned it, so it humanizes her experience, so we understand what she went through. But as a result, she became the hero, the heroine that she is, because she gave birth to Isa alayhi salam, despite all of that. Yep. So those are the two top role models in the Quran for the side of women. If you go to men now, it's a little bit easier, I think, maybe. If you think about Ibrahim alayhi salam, what qualities come into your mind?
Strength in faith.
Yep.
Sacrifice,
even the literal sacrifice.
Literal
right?
sacrifice.
Yeah, and
His position in terms of his belief in Allah at a young age,
good, yeah.
as a young man.
uncompromising in the belief in one Allah, but also always willing to engage those who were in disbelief.
Yep. Like the debate with the king.
Yes.
King Nimrod, he
Yep.
debated him. What about Musa alayhi salam?
Wow, Musa alayhi salam, where do we
It's a
start?
big body of work.
A
there,
big
isn't
body,
it?
yeah. I mean, you've got
But one outstanding thing about Musa alayhi salam.
Well, I mean, if for me, it was his patience with his people,
Okay, yeah.
especially after the latter period, the post-Pharaoh period,
The stubbornness.
of his people, patience there.
What about with before that though?
Standing for the truth.
Standing for the
Yeah.
truth against oppression.
Yes, speaking truth to tyrant, isn't
Yeah.
it? Speaking truth to power. That was one of the things
Yeah.
that makes him such a great person for us to follow. That he came up with the biggest tyrant of all, the Fir'aun, who we don't know of anyone more evil in the Quran than him, and yet even though he was so powerful, he spoke truth to power, and he liberated the Israelites from slavery, like
Absolutely.
an activist.
Yep.
And if we go for one more male example, if we go for Nuh alayhi salam, Noah, what comes into your mind when you think of his struggle, his life, his legacy? What is it that the Quran really does bring to the forefront?
For me, it was commitment.
Yeah.
Patience for so many years of ibadah and da'wah.
Yes.
Steadfastness and sabr in the face of mockery,
Yeah.
and rejection, and also recognizing
From his son as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
recognizing
son disbelief, yeah.
Yeah.
So da'wah basically.
Yes.
Because that's the main thing that the Quran says. For 950 years he kept giving da'wah, which is, to be honest, boggles your mind that somebody could continue exhausting their efforts in this cause, not seeing that much fruit in return. Now, if you put if you put all that together, I personally see a thread, which is that when it came to the men who are celebrated in the Quran, there's a common thread, which is that they had active public life of leadership and publicly calling others to good. For the side of the women, it's not the same. For the side of the women, you look at Asiya, look at Maryam, you find that their qualities were personal relationship with Allah, like Asiya you mentioned, and Maryam being a mother, and not just being a mother, being a great mother.
Of course.
So we should use them as some type of guide in thinking about, okay, what does it mean to be a great man? What does it mean to be a great woman? And that's the reason why they're mentioned. Those are the specific things that Allah wanted us to read and to deliberate over. It's not something just as a history lesson that, by the way, there was this woman, by the way, there was this guy. And we know that, the prophets of Allah were all men. There is a fringe opinion that there were one or two prophetesses, but majority are that they were men. So these things should speak volumes in this discussion.
Absolutely.
But they don't. People like to take other things as their reference point. And that's why I said we should go back to our sources, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, to have the biggest voice in defining, okay, what does it mean to be a real man? What does it mean to be a woman? Because a lot of these things, they're undisputable when you look at them in a holistic way.
And to the
Maybe
correct
in a
sources.
in the correct sources.
Yes.
And what we just did right now, I mean, this is just a conversation.
No,
It's
that was
not even
beautiful.
a
No,
scientific study or anything.
No,
But
that
to be
was
honest,
beautiful.
Most Muslims that listen, it's got a point there, man.
No, that was
I read the
beautiful.
story of Maryam, I read the story of Asiya.
Because you're right. As a Muslim man or a Muslim woman, where else would you want to go to get some kind of blueprint or a value-based framework as to what is expected of us from our Creator, Azawajal?
Yeah.
What is the
Especially
way
in confusing times as well.
Yeah.
Especially in confusing times.
100%.
and And we should reflect and ask ourselves the question, what is the wisdom behind Allah sharing these stories with us?
Exactly. Why those specific things as well, when there's a whole lifetime worth of information on this person, that person,
Sure.
but Allah selected this and Allah selected that for our ears, for this ummah.
I mean, I know this is just a side point that I would want to get your thoughts on, but I don't want us to kind of focus on it too much because I think the answer's already kind of there. It's glaringly obvious. There's obviously those, you mentioned it, you said people want to refer to other things to find out what is meant by the right woman, the good woman, the successful man, etc. and so forth. How would you encourage parents and husbands and wives, as well as just generally adult Muslim men and women, right, to steer away from other sources of references to how we define ourselves to the Quran and Sunnah? Because that is a massive problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because now we're descending into why wouldn't you refer to the Quran and Sunnah to?
Exactly,
So please elaborate on some words of encouragement to those who at the moment, for whatever reasons they're going through, for whatever crisis or issues or realities or exposure that they're going through, are not going to the Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah, I tell you something. A very close friend of mine, he went through a very messy divorce, and on the back of that, he fell into depression, as many people do. And he started listening to. He told me, "I'll listen to these mentors," and I was like, "Okay."
One of them life coach guys.
Yeah, the
Okay.
life coach guys. And then we were in a car together going to up north, and I said, "Look, put some of this on. Let me listen to it." So there's these individuals, they speak with a lot of charisma, and they say a few good things as well. But on the whole, I felt, you know what, this is for me. I can't tolerate listening to this. The reason being is because, like, for somebody who reads the Quran, studies the Quran, reads the sayings of the Prophet,
It's not coming from there.
I just see that there's such a gulf between the two things.
It's inadequate.
That I feel embarrassed that I would allow myself to listen to this and find inspiration, even though there is some goodness in it, no doubt. But I didn't say that because this is my brother.
Yeah.
He's finding solace in this. But I feel like people don't need to understand that either you are being influenced or you are an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you listen to something, what you're saying is that I'm allowing you to influence me and to shape my thoughts. And therefore, if you don't listen to the Quran, if you don't listen to the Quran as in the recitation, you don't read the Quran in terms of the translation, you don't listen to people telling you this is what Allah says in the Quran, you've got no influence whatsoever from that voice. When at the same time you would happily say this is the biggest and most substantial voice in my life, the voice of Allah through the Quran and the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have to be real with yourself that what's happening, you're getting influenced by everyone other than Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As soon as you take that move and say, actually, you know what, let me, even though I don't know Arabic, even though I'm not that religious person, let me at least read what this book has to say,
Yeah, no,
Let me get a good
100%.
translation, let me just sit down and read. You'll find that, you know what, this does have the answers. And this does give me clarity, and this does allow me to understand the dilemmas that I'm facing in my life. But unless you give yourself that chance, you'll never know. You'll just listen to people like me saying, yeah, you know what, it's got the answers. You're like, yeah, but, maybe for him. Maybe for him, he went to Egypt, he knows Arabic. And I wasn't always like that. The first time I started reading the Quran with translation was in uni. And my chacha, he said to me, Asim, you need to get yourself one of these. So he showed me his pocket-sized Quran. The Mohsin Ali Khan with the
Yeah.
burgundy cover.
Yeah.
And he goes, you need to get this, Masood, he said, you need to do this to it. And he showed me it. And what happened is that he had used it so much that the ends started to fray and curl up on themselves. Because that's what you need to do with your Quran. I was like, okay.
They're the best types of Quran.
Yeah. So then I got my copy, and on the train I used to read it. And the translation, it wasn't that great. With all the brackets and everything, you're coming and going sometimes, to be fair, reading that. But having said all of that, I was taken aback, like this is something different. I need this. I'm reading it and I'm feeling like, it's changing me inside. And that's where it started.
What advice, Ustad, would you give to brothers and sisters, predominantly brothers, because the subject we've been discussing recently,
Of course.
Yeah.
who find themselves in a situation with an attitude and with a mindset where they pick and choose whether they do it deliberately out of fear of committing to Islam, as in committing themselves to the worship of Allah Azawajal,
Yeah.
and to being the best Muslim they can be in terms of obedience, who pick and choose when they refer to Islam to seek solace, to seek support, to seek answers.
Yeah.
Because they need some time, because they wait for a calamity or a dilemma or whatever they regard as being a calamity or dilemma in their life. No matter however big or small it is objectively, whether it's they've failed a driving test or whether someone's bereavement, whatever it may be.
But it's also important to add that when that happens and you do turn to Islam, that's also not a bad thing either.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I'm talking about the attitude where we're turning to Islam, turning to Allah Azza wa Jal, the Quran and these kind of things is seen as medicine only.
Yeah.
I go to it for therapy, as opposed to it. What advice would you give for that attitude to change to something else, so that it's actually more all-encompassing? Because that's when really someone's behavior changes. Someone's behavior, attitude, mindset, worldview, and how they understand what a man is and a woman is, changes when you let the deen absorb you.
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to seeing it as medication.
I used to work in the phones for you many years ago. It's no longer around, is it?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so.
There was this woman, and I thought she was Sikh, so I started speaking to her about Islam. She goes, "Why are you telling me about Islam? I'm Muslim." I said, "Are you Muslim?" She goes, "Well, actually, I'm half Sikh, I'm half Muslim."
Okay. Very
I was
unique.
like, Derito, what's this all about? Half Sikh, half Muslim. I said, so
What masjid do you go to?
I tried to probe a little bit. I said,
Yeah.
so how do you worship Allah? She goes, well, the thing is, when I feel like, I need to pray, I'll pray to God.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So, and I said, and when you don't feel like praying, you don't? And she goes, yeah, I just don't pray. And you know what? I thought to myself, subhanAllah, many of us are like that. Many of us are like this woman who said she was half Sikh, half Muslim, that we are very selective in the way we turn to Allah. And what's even more interesting is that the Prophet ﷺ, in his final moments, when he's passing away, when you're in his most vulnerable, weak moment, he called out to Allah, وَفِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى. He said, I seek the companionship of the Most High. And he used the word rafiq, which means friend, but it also in Arabic means a friend that you lean on in times of need. Like in Arabic, you have this is my sadiq, this is my friend, this is my khalil, it's my best buddy. But rafiq is a very intimate way of speaking about a friend, like somebody who I lean on in times of need. And if you think of Allah as your friend, and now you think of your own friend, how would your friend feel if you only pick up the phone when you need something from him? That friend wouldn't want to be your friend. This guy only calls me when he needs money. That guy only calls me when he needs something from me. So we have to recognize that Allah is our friend, but we can't have a long distance relationship with Allah. Otherwise, how can you expect Allah to be pleased with you? Now, what you said is very true. There's no shame in what you do, because you should still do that. Turn to Allah when your exams, when you're going to get married and all the rest of it. But you need to take the next step. And one thing amazing about Yunus alayhi salam is that when he was in his time of need, in the belly of a whale, covered in darkness, and only Allah knows what that would have felt like
What
to
that
be there,
environment
how
like.
lonely he must have been. And he called out to Allah, Inni dhalamtu nafsi. They said, I've wronged myself, subhanak, glory be to you. In that moment, Allah answered his dua. Ibn Kathir mentioned that the angels, they heard the dua of Yunus alayhi salam, and they said to Allah, Allah, we hear the voice of a familiar person coming from a strange place. And Allah said, this is my servant and slave Yunus alayhi salam. And the angel said, Allah, on account of the good he used to do in times of good, help him in his time of need. Help him in his time of need. And that teaches us that if you want Allah to be there for you in times of need, you have to be with Allah in
Allah
times of
Akbar.
good as well.
Allah Akbar.
In both good and bad. And it just makes sense on a human level as well.
100%.
You want to be close to someone, you got to share in their happiness, you got to share in their lows. But the benefit of that is Allah is with you.
100%.
In your good time and in your bad time. So I'd give that advice to the brothers that have that, and all of us fall into that. And it's a little bit obnoxious as well, especially after Allah helped you, then you forget Allah. And that's something that Allah says the mushrikun would do. That when you would say, when they're in the middle of the ocean, and the storm is brewing, and they see the waves come crashing down, دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين. They call out to Allah as though they've been devoted servants all their lives. And Allah says, فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ, when we save them and bring them onto the shores, فَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ, only a few of them stay loyal to Allah. They just forget about Allah as if, well,
Yeah, you don't want to share. You don't want to share anything with the mushrikeen.
Yeah, quite frankly, you don't want to do that.
These are traits, obviously, that we need to understand how bad they are, because we don't really see it like, yeah, okay, fair enough, but it's not that big a deal.
No, you definitely put it into perspective there. Moving on, but still kind of staying on the theme of Muslim men and masculinity from an Islamic point of view, from a Quranic prophetic point of view. There was a concept or a practice which the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the prophetic statements called Ghayra.
Yes.
Right? Again, when we try to find English definitions for these terms, it's sometimes you'll never get an accurate definition because of the uniqueness of the Arabic language. But the most commonly one that's cited, and I'm actually citing Ustadh Fatima Barakatullah in an article that she wrote, was protective jealousy.
Yes.
Right? Could you elaborate on what this term means and in what context it was cited by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam?
So the word is, from what I've read, the correct pronunciation, Ghayra. And it's the feeling of anger towards another entity when they're violating something of yours, you or something of yours. And in one hadith, the Prophet said that Allah yagharu, that He has this protective jealousy when He sees His believing slave transgressing His boundaries. So Allah has this quality of ghayra, this protective jealousy, if you want to use that. I think it's a good translation, to be fair. Yeah, I think it's a good translation. I haven't seen anything better, to be honest. So dismissing it as a negative trait is very dangerous off the bat, because Allah, this is one of Allah's attributes, to have this. And then in another hadith, the Prophet said there's a type of ghayra that Allah loves. And He defined it as when somebody has this protective jealousy, when there are grounds for doubt, when there is a riba, which is talking about. Now the thing is, the hadith has some weakness, so we don't want to build everything on a weak hadith. But the idea is that there is a good understanding of this, a healthy version of this, that we should, if we don't have it, internalize it, and if we do have it, we should hold on to it. But then there's also extremes. Yes, there's also extremes. So, for example, honor killings. This is like an extreme manifestation of having this protective jealousy over your family. And that's not something Islam would stand for. But then there's the opposite, which is having no sense of possessive jealousy over your wife or your daughter or your mother when men are oogling at them, staring at them. And then another problem I've seen is that men who have this, maybe in the right version as well, are shamed by women and told that this is your insecurity.
Yes. So I'm very glad you touched upon that.
And this is a problem, and sisters need to reflect like what they actually are saying when they make those claims.
Let's flesh this out, because Ghayra or protective jealousy is a term or a concept which recently, in recent years, for whatever ideological trends and changes are happening outside of us from very powerful entities and lobby groups and ideologies, it's seen as a type of control. You're basically justifying control, isn't it? How your wife speaks and how loud she speaks and who she speaks to and who your sister and your daughters, how they're carrying themselves, even amongst first cousins, even amongst family relatives.
It's okay, quickly add something.
Yeah,
it's basically by and large skewed by some criticizers of Ghayra from men to justify a toxic trait within the man.
Or to label it as a toxic trait.
Yeah, or to label it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's concealed as that, and it's used as a justification for something that he wants to do because of his own insecurities, actually.
That's true. But
and grounding it in Islam because he feels that will allow it to carry weight.
My dear brother, look, we know of, we have relatives who pray salah, they cover themselves. You would regard them to be practicing Muslims on paper. They would define themselves as we are practicing Muslims, but yet there'll be certain environments, there'll be certain family setups, social gatherings, cultural norms, banter between brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, cousins, this kind of stuff, that's allowed. And then when you cite the concept of Ghayra, or like why you wouldn't want your wife, your missus to be in a certain environment, or your sisters to be in a certain environment, or yes, we'll attend these gatherings as long as it's like this and that.
Yeah.
It's thrown at us even as from family members that are somewhat practicing. So how do we address this problem?
The thing is, it's not really a problem of, that's the way you like it and this is the way I like it. So, let me be like this and you be like that. Actually, we should say, what does Islam say about this? And we know, and no Muslim disagree that Islam has regulations on how the opposite gender should interact.
Absolutely.
And though they may differ as to what the details are, the core value is that you should be cautious. And there's a famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that ما تركت بعد فتنة أضر على الرجال من النساء. There's no fitna, trial, that is more harmful that I've left than women for men, or the temptation of women that men have. And every man knows this. Every man knows 100%. This, except that now it's a bit more, actually, maybe I can't say that as bluntly as I should, but this is the reality.
They know this.
Therefore, that cautious approach should govern every interaction. Who would disagree with that?
Absolutely.
But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, like you said, you said brother-in-laws and you said cousins.
Yeah, first cousins, brother-in-laws.
Yeah.
Because in certain South Asian cultures, right, especially from our neck of the woods, where we come from, our parents come from, where it's actually somewhat normal for brothers to live. Maybe trends are changing, but it's still happening, where you'll have multiple brothers with their wives in one household, right? And so therefore, and then during wedding season and marriage, there'll be banter between the opposite sides, and these things can lead to madness. And there's been times where your father's first cousin has messed about inappropriately with his niece because of those lax environments. We can't pretend that those things have never happened. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that how do we overcome those cultural urfi norms, which are problematic from a dini point of view?
Yeah, we should.
Wedding photos, that's a standard one. That's the most standard one, which practicing brothers, I've seen them do. I've attended these weddings where you just got married, you and your wife on stage, and all the mandem around her. And take photos. Very massive. My brothers praying. Meaning they just prayed dhuhr and they just bounced onto stage with the brother's wife on the stage. Like, this is very common. It's a common practice.
Very, very sorry to say that is.
Would you say that's an Islamic practice?
Shameful behavior. That is.
But I'm saying that is atrocious. I'm saying it's very common.
And the thing is, okay, wedding happens once. Okay, khalas, you've done that, and then that's it. But the more pressing issue is on a daily basis. The interaction between cousins and this and the other. We have to take the same approach. So that, look, maybe the details of where I should sit and where you should sit have not been spelled out in the Quran, but we know that when we pray together, you got to pray there and I've got to pray over here. 100%. So why does that go out the window when you're sitting in the front room? Should we not, to the best of our ability, without being awkward, without being weird, have that same distance, healthy distance, and still have that family relations that we can have? Why don't we have that as the asl? Instead of, that's what, our uncles and aunties, they used to have iftar around the table all the time. Why are we going to change now? But because that's not in line with the Islamic teachings about how we're supposed to interact.
And that's not where we get our life lessons
that's
from.
That's not where we get our guidance from. And the thing is, there's some shocking ahadith as well. Like, al-hamu maut, the brother-in-law is death. I don't know if you come across a hadith. Yes. Where's that? What is that all about? That's about the actual real present danger in a possible infidelity taking place between your wife and your brother. And that's coming from the lips of the Prophet ﷺ, as if to say, look, just be cautious. And we know from stories of infidelity taking place between married couples and brother-in-laws and Allah musta'an. So it's not like we need evidence. Really? No, it's already there. So then why would you take a lackadaisical approach to this when you know that it could lead to devastating outcomes? At the same time, a person doesn't need to be overly strict and make things so awkward that the relationship between the family starts to become so distant that there is no real bonds anymore. You become like strangers. This is the opposite thing that can happen. I mean, I don't think this is as big a problem as this side of the spectrum, but it's also a problem as well. And there's something that Sheikh Salman Al-Auda may Allah free him,
Ameen.
he said, which really is quite profound. He said that whoever closes a door that Allah has not closed, people will break it open. Think about that. Whoever closes a door Allah has not closed, people will break it open. What that means is that if you overly restrict an area that Sharia hasn't, people will react. And they will react in a way that is not proportional, and that will lead to more problems.
Yeah.
But that was as a result of closing that door in the first place.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Big
So,
over the top.
you know, there's this much flexibility Allah gave you, but He said, no, it's this much.
Yeah.
People are like, what? No. And then when they react,
Yeah.
you are the cause of the outcome to that situation. So there must be, a nuanced understanding to these tricky, sensitive issues. And you add on the layer of, we're living in a non-Muslim society where it's a highly sexualized society. And this is something that people do not appreciate. We're living where there is sex everywhere. Everywhere, and people spend more than 8 hours on their screen, 147 minutes the average person spends on social media every single day. What are they looking at? So they're being fed all this sexualized content, and they're saying, yeah, we should just be open, we can be friends with each other, we can talk to each other. I mean, you're living in cuckoo land. You live in cuckoo. I mean,
They know where they're living. They know where they're living.
But you know what's going to happen?
Yeah, they are living in
You're gonna
cuckoo. They
find
like
out
cuckoo
that,
land.
they like cuckoo, yeah, but they're not going to like it when they find out that their partners cheat on them.
Yeah.
No one likes it when their partners cheated on
100%.
them. Even till today, with all the promiscuity, people still shame others for cheating, being a cheat, isn't it? And I still find that quite amazing. Like, you'd be so liberal in everything, but yet, don't you dare cheat on me.
Yeah. Expectation is so hard, isn't it? Don't be unfaithful, but live like this.
Wallahi, I don't understand how people can have that standard in their mind when everything that is required to maintain that standard, they beat down. And they say, no, that's conservatism, that's extremism, that's just you being weird, etc., etc. Like, honestly, where does that come from?
Give us an example, or perhaps some guidelines as to what kind of relationship should you have with Sirat Rahim. So your first cousins, who you've been raised with as children, who you did play with at a time where it was okay to play with.
Yeah.
You've got a brotherly sisterly relationship, albeit the Sharia allows you to marry each other as you get to a particular age and so forth. What is the type of, prophetic, Islamic, wise, cautious?
What are the limits?
What are the limits between first cousins, second cousins, first cousins?
Regarding family, you're supposed to be there for them in their good times and their bad times. There should be a level of closeness that they come to you before they go to other people, and everything that's required to maintain that level should be kept. The only regulation is that, look, if they're the opposite gender, then when you do sit down, you shouldn't be alone. Yeah, and when there is interaction, it should be respectful and it should be done with good intentions. And this is another thing that people they fall down on, which is, on the face of it, things are kushti, but in the mind, there's shahwa, there's lust, and a person needs to,
because that's where all the mazas happen.
So
exactly,
Cuckoo land starting cuckoo land, isn't it?
So the person needs to say, even though this is technically halal, in here it's not halal anymore.
They need to check themselves.
So I need to actually withdraw a little bit, purify my intentions, work on myself, then put myself back in this situation. So family needs to be, you need to make efforts, and maybe even more efforts, because of these types of regulations that we have to follow to make sure that this is taken care of. So, for example, it could be now your cousin, she's got married. Okay, what about husband? You should come closer to him so that you can be closer to her, and that if there's a problem between the both of them, that he would tell you that she's going through this problem at the moment. Make dua, or can you give her advice? This and that. So there's ways that we can explore and to be creative so that we can keep that bond together. And Muslims, as Shaykh Haytham says, the unity of the ummah comes from the unity of the family.
100%.
And if the family are not united, then the ummah will never be united. So we have to, and I fall short in this area, and it's something that I need to work on.
So do we, bro.
But
So do we.
it's an important thing. Yeah, and we shouldn't let the fact that khalwa, being alone with the opposite gender, be the excuse that we use. That therefore I don't need to chat to her anymore. So she's living her life, I'm living my life. That shouldn't be the case.
So staying on the theme of having Ghayra, having protective jealousy and stuff in the age of social media, where everything's just on Instagram and Snap, and again, it is common. I'm not even talking about what's on paper perceived as, and I don't like using these terms because they mean different things,
Yeah.
right? Practicing. Couples, yani, posting pictures of themselves. She's beautified. He has no problem. They're making TikTok videos together.
Yeah.
Some of them even couch it around reminders and stuff like this. But when you're doing these reminders, you know, yeah, fine. Hijab, jilbab is on, but
Other things are being reminded as well.
other things have been reminded. You know, she looks prepared. Like she you know. So,
Yeah.
what would your advice be to? I'm now talking about the practicing community here. Practicing brothers and sisters, people
Yeah.
who otherwise would consider themselves to be practicing, right, or at least attempting to be practicing. Right?
In fact, you would argue that their entire social media presence and profile is for the purpose of trying to teach some type of good. You'll find those.
Yes, 100%.
In fact, my presence and the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I feel that there is some good in this. And my purpose of doing it is actually to bring people closer to Islam in some bizarre, strange strategies.
We're not even talking about the bandeh who rago just flexing with their women doing
Yeah,
these
yeah.
TikTok
Yeah,
videos
yeah.
because we're with them we have to go back to stage one, which is
Irish dancing.
like we have to go yeah, or like these ones there, so like, you know, who eats the most, who has the worst anger, who's the best cook, that should only be, you know what I mean?
I don't know actually who's the best cook.
Those ones there, yeah. Or
Who's the best Muslim?
who gives each other the beats more? This one, like, no, we're not talking about them because they're still at stage one, which is reconnect with the Quran, reconnect with your identity, go back to the source,
Get off your phone.
We're talking about the ones who have already doing those things, but still, you know, they appear on social media, their wives appear on social media, they're doing it together, and quite frankly, they can very quickly also find those pitfalls of thirsty people online.
Yeah.
And flexing your wife, even though you think that she's covered and stuff like this. Is this something that's encouraged? Would you encourage this to a young student of yours?
I mean, I'm old school. I would never post a picture of my wife on social media, even if it was with niqab. But at the same time, I'm all for Muslim youth, not the youth, youth finding creative ways to spread the message of Islam, even if it's as an afterthought type of thing on their platforms. You know, like I'm into fashion, I'm into bodybuilding, whatever, but I can give a good message as well.
Yes.
I even encourage that. You know, so your whole presence is not about, you know, giving that, or your whole presence is about maybe fashion or something. But then you use that,
Sure,
you know, to get, when you get a following, to give a good message. However, what I'm totally against is when the husband and wife videos are coming out on TikTok and Instagram, and there's beautification. And the thing is, when you go in front of a camera, you're gonna beautify yourself, man.
Of course.
People are watching you.
Yeah, people are watching you. You feel that desire to do that.
Of course.
Now you're gonna fall into problems, which is okay. You're gonna go down that slippery slope, which is how much is enough. Is it just the eyeliner? What about the eyelashes? What
People
about
leave
this?
comments. You read those comments. How
Exactly,
much
yeah.
likes has it got?
Yeah.
Who's
So
hyping what? What
it's
did they like about it?
It feeds into your ego, generally. Anyway, when you make it about you and your face, now you're going to battle with your intention. Why am I doing this? Is it really about Allah? Is it about my presence? And secondly, you're somebody's wife. Yeah. What does that mean? It means that your role in this life now is no longer as a single woman, but now as a wife and as a mother. How does this connect with that? Because for many people, this takes over their life and it becomes their baby, isn't it? It
Their
becomes
identity.
baby. Yeah, their identity. But as a Muslim woman, what is your vision? Because if you haven't even answered that question, you'll be turning around thinking, my vision is, you know, what other women are doing as well. And what other women are doing is becoming TikTokers and influencers and making money through endorsements and all the rest of it. So what I would say to our Muslim sisters is that you have to clarify what is your vision first, and then plan out if you're going to have a social media presence around that. One of the most amazing things my wife told me about, you know, Farhat Hashimi?
Yes, of
A
course.
very famous,
yes, very well known
scholar,
Pakistani scholar, yeah.
Huda Institute,
Of course.
teaching Quran around the world.
Old school.
SubhanAllah. Yeah,
Inshallah.
old school.
May Allah bless and preserve
That
him.
she, she told her students that, you know, before I do my dars and don't know how many she does in a day, I ask my husband, is there anything you want me to do? And if the answer is yes, then I will do that before I do anything else. Now, this is this is a woman who has knowledge about deen, probably more than many male du'at, preachers out there.
She's a giant of our time. I mean, you put it quite lightly. Dr. Farhad Qasmi is very well known. Big in the Dawah scene.
So, and despite her knowledge and despite her position, what she was teaching the students is that in the grand scheme of things, the priority towards my husband, according to Allah, is greater than my priority towards teaching the ummah. And that speaks volumes. That means that she knows what her priorities are. And that's with everything that she's been given. What about if you're not on that level and you're still making those compromises? So my general principle is that you can have your channels doing khair, that's fine. But where does it fit in with the vision?
And make sure it's khair as well, yeah.
Yeah, make sure it's khair. But you said you're talking about practicing evil. Make sure that your intentions are clear. It's with the vision, but make sure it doesn't compromise on the priorities. And this goes back to the discussion about working.
100%.
Yeah, because you said about the need to work.
You went back to that first question.
The need to work is one thing. The desire to work is something else. Yeah, and people usually conflate the two. And if you live in London, you need two incomes, and that's the system that they created. They want the tax money that comes from the second employee in the house.
100%.
It's not just it happened by accident. We got to go with it. 100%. This is the system.
This is why first wave feminism got a lot of support eventually, because it's an extra taxation of the other gender.
Same thing in Saudiization right now. Why do you think women are allowed to drive?
Yeah.
So you'll buy another car.
Yeah.
Why are they allowed to work? Man, that's going to be more money to the government, right? Hopefully I can go Umrah again, inshallah. So the need to work versus the desire to work. Forget about the need, because the need is, well, what can we do with the need? The need is the need. We've got to roll with it in the best way. But when it comes to desire and what I should aspire to, that's where the discussion is. When it comes to this, it's actually very simple. It's not that complicated. The fact is that as a woman, Allah, or women rather, have been given certain traits and qualities that men have not been given, and the vice versa. And based on that, they have roles that are different. And those roles are complementary. They're not contradictory. And those who therefore follow their traits, their intrinsic traits, and go with those roles will live a life where they'll find happiness. And a lot of sisters and brothers don't understand this point. That when they think, oh yeah, wife's got to be obedient to the husband, oh yeah, the man says I've got to work, etc., be the breadwinner. In their mind, they accept that begrudgingly, for whatever reason. But they don't realize that actually not following on that order or that command
will cause bigger problems.
Will lead to unhappiness. It does lead to unhappiness. 100%. And some women, they talk about this, that I had a fantastic career and lots of money. In the process, I felt that I lost X, Y, Z, and now I feel unfulfilled. And
you're alone with a cat now.
Huh? You're along with the cat, yeah.
I'm telling you, this is very.
I only truly appreciated this when that brother I said, a friend of mine went through a bad divorce. So he's allowed me to mention the story without some identifiable details, but it's very strange the way things happened, because initially he got married, lived with his parents, and it didn't work out, so he moved out. And he was happy. They had a child, and then the issue of finances came up, so he moved back into the house with his mother and father. They're elderly, difficult people. Things got very tricky, and so he said they decided that we need to save up, buy a house, and move out. How are we going to save up? You need to work. So the husband, he pressured the wife to work.
Husband being your friend.
He pressured the wife to work, and begrudgingly she accepted. And then they ended up working in the same place. It's a big company, the same company. So they thought, this is good, we see each other, and we can look out for each other, etc., etc. Over the course of the years, the marriage became, it started to sour basically, and the romance, love, everything went. And he started to talk to me about trust issues. And in my mind, I didn't make any connections. I was just like, he started saying, she's always on the phone. Like, even in the middle of the night, she'll look at the phone. I was like, people get addicted to the phones. Maybe, depression, I don't know, you just become more attached to your device, whatever. And then after some time, he said, my other half, she said that she doesn't want to be with me anymore. She's forcing me to divorce her. I don't want to divorce her. We've got a child. So I said, listen, we need to speak to your wife and see what's going on. She doesn't want to speak to anyone. I said, look, okay, maybe my mum's a counsellor. She's a woman, she's a counsellor, so she doesn't speak to anyone. I said, look, what's happened here? He goes, nothing. She wants a divorce, and that's the end of it. One day he took out an old phone. He was looking through his drawer. He saw an old phone, and that old phone was connected to the WhatsApp of his other half. And I don't know how, but there was some downloading of the chats, and he opened a chat which had the most messages. The name was a lady's name, and what he read led to the revelation that his wife's having an affair. Absolutely devastated, soul destroying. And what happened is that he didn't know what to do, and then things got even nasty after that. But I won't continue with the story, I'll just pause it there, because one of the things that I learned from just that episode is that, look, the sister initially didn't want to work.
Was the affair with someone from work?
Yeah, in work. So she ended up having an affair with somebody who she started working with in that workplace, which is the same workplace as her husband. So I thought to myself, forget the blame, who's to blame on this, but just look at the steps behind this.
That led to it.
Yeah, that led to it. And look at how the Sharia came to mitigate those type of situations even arising. So it's clear that the sister didn't, maybe thought that these kind of things, would happen. I'll go to work and I'll get messed up, or this would happen. I don't want to do it. Yeah, but once you open that door and you say, let me see myself, which is what a lot of Muslims do. Let me see, I can handle it, it's fine. That's when they fall into problems. So going back to the work situation, I would say, look, sisters, if you need to work, okay, that's fine. When you do go to work in an environment that is conducive to safeguarding your chastity and your iman. And that could look different for every single person, but that's the expectation you should place yourself on. If you need to take a pay cut, take a pay cut to have that security from falling into this between you and Allah. Forget about your husband, between you and Allah. And secondly, when it comes to work, the priority, it cannot come at the expense of greater priorities. The husband and the family and the children, this has to be your greatest priority. So therefore, if you have a choice, not need, a choice, you must factor these things in. And if you can work whilst juggling these things, and your husband's okay, Bismillah. Islamically speaking, there's nothing wrong with wanting that desire. Mm-hmm. But when it comes at the cost of these things, now forget about your husband. It's between you and Allah. There's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I know it's difficult. And I know because as an imam, I get these situations and stories coming to me all the time. And from that basis, do I advise my sisters? Not from a basis like, what would I want in my wife? Let me just project that onto all the sisters. No. I'm trying to understand this is the situations that arise later on that hurt you. And the Sharia is giving these guidelines to protect you and to protect me. So why not follow them? Especially if this is not a need that you have to do. And as for Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she became married to the Prophet ﷺ, this is the thing, that the thing that Allah celebrated her for, and the Prophet himself, he loved her so much for, was not being a businesswoman. It was being his supporter.
Yep.
Being his supporter, being at the side of the Prophet ﷺ. She was there in the very beginning. And, when the Prophet was shaken to his core, when he received revelation for the first time, it's amazing that he came home not to Abu Bakr. He came home to his wife Khadija.
Yep.
And the words of reassurance that Allah would never humiliate a man like you, that is what kept him going and strong. And the fact that she spent her money and used it to allow him to further the message of Islam is what made her a hero, a heroine, not the fact that she was a businesswoman. So if you want to look at Khadija, look at her holistically.
100%.
Don't pick and choose. She is our mother. She is a guiding light to men and to women. But let's look at the whole picture first.
100%.
And even there is I'll just finish on this, that there is a verse in Surah Duha that some scholars say is a reference to Khadija. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. We found you financially stricken and we enriched you. Imam Qurtubi said that enrichment came through Khadija. So that
the financial enrichment.
Yeah. So that verse is actually celebrating Khadija radiallahu ta'ala. So she is mentioned in the Quran, at least in this verse.
SubhanAllah. That was a deep story, man. I'm telling you, that was a deep story. That's just got me thinking.
The brother one.
Huh?
The brother one.
Yeah, the brother one. Was this the same brother you drove and was listening to a life coach?
Yeah.
Allah make things easy for him. I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of bringing the podcast to a close. I know people are seeing the 3 books here, which we are going to get to, inshallah. I want to quickly touch upon brothers who have found themselves in marriages, and I'm sure the same applies to sisters as well. But I'm talking in the context of the conversations we've had mainly with brothers who didn't ask the right questions, who didn't inquire as much before they got married to their wives, to then marry them, or they thought that they wouldn't care about certain things until they got married.
Yeah.
For example, male friends,
Yeah.
male colleagues, beautifying herself in every environment except the home for him. So dawat, weddings,
Yeah.
Eid, any kind of family gathering,
Social media pictures.
Yeah.
Her best self is for those environments, but bichara gets, you know what I mean? he gets a dud version, nothing happening at home, yeah? So,
Allah,
yeah. And then obviously, having the male friends one is a major one. Some brothers, they thought, okay, I mean, how close can she be with the male friend?
Yeah.
But afterwards.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to 2 groups of men?
Yeah.
Those who are looking for perspectives and those who have now found themselves in that situation. What is the best way to address these problems?
I think that a lot of brothers, when they get married, they're a bit naive. I was just speaking to a brother recently. I said, he said, I'm looking to get married. I said, okay, what qualities do you want in your wife? He's like, what do you mean? I said, what does 10 out of 10 look like to you?
Yeah.
And he's like, I didn't really think you're going to ask me that question. I've never thought of myself. I said, why not? And I said, I'm not asking you to be fussy, but I'm asking you, do you know what you want? And he's like, she prays 5 times a day with hijab. I said, okay. Anything else? Like, if she doesn't have these things, you will not look. And he's like, I didn't think of it. And I find that many brothers in this situation that they haven't actually thought through what they want. It's a little bit naivety, but it's also a little bit being idealistic as well. As long as she's on the sunnah. Yeah, Habib, what does that look like to you exactly? So this is one thing. And the second thing is that how to ask those questions. You don't want to come across as like an investigator. So in 2005, I saw on your profile that I said, well, this guy's a creep, man.
From 2013.
This guy's a creep. So you have to know what you want, and you have to be able to, find out whether those things matter to you, and if they do, you need to ask about them. But some people, it doesn't matter to them. For example, the friends one. Alhamdulillah, in my mind, I didn't have that question because we weren't living in that time where, somebody would have a Facebook profile and have loads of guy friends. But today, that's a reality for most people.
100%.
Yeah. So you should ask him, does that matter to me? And most probably the answer can be, yeah, it does.
Yeah, well, if it doesn't matter to you, then there's a matter with you.
This guy's full of lines, man.
Aki's all about lines.
Lines, man.
Must be.
Lord Sugar's been watching this. Get those lines.
No, but it's true. If what Aki's saying is that if it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter,
That's
right?
secondary issue.
Yeah.
That's secondary issue. But if it does matter to you, because that's what I'm saying is more general. Like, for example, virginity. A lot of brothers, didn't ask this question. Maybe once upon a time it was an appropriate question, but nowadays I think it is an appropriate question, especially if it matters to you. Like, you ask yourself, if I found out that my wife, in a halal way maybe, or a haram way, had this relationship, iyadhan billah, how would I feel about that? I know someone who he didn't bother asking that question, and her sister alluded to a past as well. Good on her that she alluded to a past.
He didn't pick up on it.
I don't know. Either way, when he married her and they consummated the marriage, he realized he couldn't handle it. He divorced her. He divorced her. And the thing is, what a disaster. If you just asked yourself, does that matter to me or not?
And
you could have avoided
I understand that
something like that.
sensitive questions like that. You're not experienced or been in a situation where you don't know how to ask that question, how to explore that subject.
Yeah,
but there's
this
ways.
is tricky.
Seek the advice.
Yeah.
Find examples. Speak
Exactly,
to brothers
yeah.
who've been in a situation like that and they've had to ask that question in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
There's ways of asking. You could ask, have you had any previous relationships?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's two people here, right? So, if that question matters, ask that question. As a sister, you don't have to answer that question. If you don't think that this is going to go any further with this brother, don't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
That brother could use it against you. He
That's
could
right.
dishonor you with that
100%.
information. So therefore, as a sister, if you believe that, you know what, other boxes are ticked here, I actually like this person, how should I answer this? Answer it in an indirect way. Do not be explicit about things. Just say, I've done, I had a past, I asked Allah to forgive me, and I never turned back to that. Let that brother digest that information, and then he decides what he wants to do.
But then what do you do when you have that situation of the banda you just mentioned, Mrs. alluded to, he still didn't get it.
He just really get
He still didn't get it. Then what?
He needs to listen to this podcast. What's wrong with you?
Okay.
That's really
Mashallah.
Yeah.
interesting points, man.
Another one, then, before we kind of bring the podcast to kind of a close, is what about the brothers who don't care? The brothers who don't care about, just flaunting their wives and making videos of them and doing TikTok videos, having male friends,
or whatever their red lines are.
they're on.
It's like a really light red.
Yeah.
And the boundaries are so far. It's like a cricket boundary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the red line is like pink. It's like
It's pink.
It's
I thought it was
pink.
going to say rainbow.
Oh yeah, whatever. It's not red.
it's definitely not red.
It's definitely not red, yeah.
What would be just some advice to them brothers to at least understand that perhaps they should care?
Yeah.
And
So I personally, I've thought about this a lot actually, and I think that people don't know why they get married, and they don't know what they're supposed to do when they get married. So there's one critical verse in Surah Al-Harim. Allah says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." Believers, save yourselves and your families from a fire. And the scholars say this is the primary target of this instruction are husbands, fathers. So what that means, therefore, is that your number one objective behind getting married, or as a husband, as a father, is to get these people and take them with me into Jannah, save them from the hellfire. That is my responsibility, and I need to carve out a lifestyle that's going to be conducive to giving them the best opportunities to save themselves. Now everything else will fall in line. All these smaller issues start to make more sense as, I should figure about that. This is more important. What's my kids listening to at the moment? What they're watching on TV? What does my wife talk about when she's on the phone to her friends? This is not going to get us into Jannah. I need to work on this. I am the murabbi to my family. That is the way you should look at yourself.
100.
I am the teacher to my family. And as a teacher, I need to hold that standard. And as a teacher, I need to be actively involved in their life in trying to shape it so that it leads to that. And even if you fail, you did your duty before Allah. And you will get that on your account. You did it. Even if your wife didn't listen to you, even if your children listened to you, you got it. Just like Nuh alayhi salam, his wife was treacherous towards him. His son disbelieved in him. I mean, it just boggles the mind. He is from Ulul Azm, the 5 greatest men, prophets to walk the face of the earth, and his own wife was treacherous towards him. And she used to say that, Tabari said that she used to go around saying, my husband's baghl. My husband is a madman. Imagine how hurtful is that. And his own son, when his dad said, come on board the ark, look, the rain is coming down, it's going to flood. He said, it's okay, I'm going to go to that mountain over there. Lord, I'm good. How devastating. But Nuh alayhi salam is a legend, is a hero, is our example. Even though that didn't work. Why? Because he did it for Allah's sake. And that's what you have to recognize as a husband, as a father. You're on a mission. And everything that matters in that mission is what you need to do. And whatever doesn't matter, put it to one side. It's a distraction.
bring the podcast to a close. I think some of the themes that we've spoken about today can also be, rooted back to perhaps the kind of generation that is emerging in light of social media, in light of instant gratification, instant information, no meaningful time commitment, right?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Sheikh, even this whole kind of like the millennial, and what's the generation that comes after the millennials?
Z.
Yeah, Generation
Z,
Z.
yeah, Generation Z, yeah.
So this kind of like just wanting things quickly and instantly, and a sense of entitlement, right? These can tie in very easily with those other problems that we spoke about, right? Not meaningfully connecting with the Quran and Sunnah, not meaningfully committing to seeking knowledge, not meaningfully trying to build a relationship with Allah Azawajal.
Yeah.
We have 3 very beautiful looking books with some powerful titles here. We have The Kingdom of God, which is actually a very interesting name because it's name of the film The Kingdom of God. We've got The Simple Seerah, mashallah, and we've got The Heart of the Quran. You wrote and had these books published. How long did it take you to get all 3 done?
So alhamdulillah, in the space of 2 years we published these 3
Mashallah.
books. Yeah.
And prior to putting pen to paper, did you ever envisage getting 3 books done in that space of time?
No, so I was never good at English when I was young. I hated English. I scraped through C in GCSE as well. My mum, that was only because mum got so much tuition thrown at me. I managed to get C.
Bless her.
So this book here, the first one, The Heart of the Quran.
So this is the first one, yeah?
Tafsir Surah Yasin, yeah. That one I only did, subhanAllah, because one of my students, he kept on bugging me, because we studied this surah together for about 4 years. It was a weekly dars on a Sunday morning, 7:30 a.m. For 4 years we took studying Surah Yasin. And then afterwards he compiled these massive set of notes, okay? And then he said, Ustadh, you should publish this as a book. And I was like, come on, don't be silly. Me publishing a book? No. Honestly, it was like, there's no way that I'm going to do that. I'm not even interested in doing that. So this brother, Ahmed Hamouda, his name is.
Oh, Ustadh Ali's brother.
Yeah.
Top
Ahmed
brother.
Hamouda. May Allah give him Jannah for this.
Ameen, ya Rabbi.
He went through the notes. He edited them a little bit, and then he printed them out and bound them with a cover, put it in a box. And we had, I think, some meeting or something in some faraway place, and he was there, I was there, and he said, I've got a gift for you. Took me to the side, opened this box, Surah Yasin by Asim Khan. I was like, what?
Hold on. So Ali went and did this. Ahmed, sorry. Ahmed went and did this without you knowing.
Without me knowing, he did all this,
As
and
a surprise,
and he gave it to me, and I was like, what is this? When I saw my name on the front cover, I thought I could possibly do this. And then what happened is that I thanked him and I said, I'll have a look at this and maybe we'll do something. Initially I thought maybe I'll just change a few things around and make it work. But I read it and I thought, no, this is not working. This is too academic. It needs to be more for general people.
The laity.
So then I wrote the whole thing over. Actually, when I decided to go abroad for 2 weeks by myself, and my wife wasn't very happy about that because I was already traveling quite a lot. So I said, I need to go away for 2 weeks. And she's like, "Why?" I said, "I need to work on this project book." She goes, "Come on, you just got to have a good time." Yeah, I know what you're gonna do over there. I was like, "No, for real, I want to go because I need quiet. I need to be away from all these other things." And may Allah reward her. She said, "Okay, go for it." So I went, and in that 2 weeks, I wrote a quarter of this book, and only then I believed that actually I could do it. So after that, I just cracked on with it, came back, and then alhamdulillah.
So how many holidays in total?
No, she didn't allow me to do these are not holiday material now. That was just the belief, I suppose.
So
it's possible to do that.
Absolutely.
So when our brother Ahmed came to you, what did he present you with initially?
He presented me the notes from my dars.
Yeah.
That he had edited and kind of smoothed over.
In a book form?
Yeah, he printed it out in a book and he got it bound with a cover.
Did it look like this?
No, not a design cover.
Okay,
just plain. I still have it in my loft room.
Okay, so this is
OG copy.
So this is a commentary on Surah Yasin with diagrams and illustrations.
Yeah, the idea is, look, I remember learning Arabic in Egypt and I find it so difficult and I almost gave up on it. And I felt like, a lot of people don't read the Quran because they don't know Arabic, and they don't read tafsir because tafsir literature is very dense, very academic. So when I got to the other side, when I could learn a new Arabic.
This is very unique because you've got the revelation timeline of Surah Yasin. You've got this is the prophetic because it's a Makki verse, right? So you've got the year of private dawah, then the 4th and 5th year of public dawah.
Yeah, there's a timeline in the beginning. Yeah,
fantastic.
just to show when the surah was revealed, to give
Yeah.
it that context. You know.
These things can be very powerful. It is powerful.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, look, how do I learn in university, in college? How do people like
Absolutely.
us grow up learning? We don't learn that traditional way. We learn with visuals. We learn with diagrams and tables.
And it communicates that. That's the
Yeah.
first thing when I saw some of the diagrams. It was like, you're learning.
That's right. It kind of makes you
presenting
into
it that
that
way.
study mode, isn't it? That you're accustomed to. So then I thought I'd do it based on that type of format, where it's kind of like a bridge. You know, it takes you into the tafsir genre through this kind of vehicle of making it easy to read
fantastic.
and to understand.
And then after this came
Then after that came this Kingdom of God, which is tafsir of Surah Mulk. Just following the same, to be honest, of the heart of the Quran, but this one I indulged in a bit more reflections. So things that I learned from the surah myself, I put them inside the book.
to your
and watched
personal
them.
reflections.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
I have to say I love this.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Because
because
it is a great inclusion.
no, because it then makes sense, because people understand first and foremost.
It gives
that
a story,
it's
isn't
a
it?
journey.
It's a Meccan verse,
You get-
Meccan chapter, and then boom, you see where the verses were at what time, at what point of Prophet Prophet's life.
Seerah as well, yeah.
Fantastic. How long did it take you to complete this one? Start to end.
About a year, I think, maybe.
no holidays?
18, no holidays.
Okay,
no.
cool.
I really should go on those holidays.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And the most latest.
Yeah, this is the latest one, the Simple Seerah.
Can I open this?
Bismillah, yeah.
It's
Go
got,
for it.
looks like it's got bookmarks and citations.
Yeah, don't take the books out, so I'll get killed when I get home.
And Brother Toiris Miana, followed by Mufti Menk. Mashallah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea of the book is to write
That one is forward of
a
Really?
novel,
I missed that.
a novel version or rendition of the seerah, and this never been done before. Strangely, in English language, never been the case that you read a seerah book and it's been kind of created into that storytelling narrative. It's always very historical, names, dates. This happened, that happened. So for youngsters, I mean, my daughter is 11 years old. You know,
That's super creative.
are you like that? Okay, alhamdulillah.
Like, this is you've got. Is this your idea?
Yeah, that was my idea. Yeah, but I took it from East London Masjid.
Like I've not seen that.
East London Masjid, yeah, they've got that. So I forgot what I was going to say now, but
Shout outs.
these are the sponsors to the chapters. Yeah,
Oh.
the sponsors of the chapter. So there's 12 chapters. I think there's 14 chapters. There's 14 sponsors. May Allah reward those people.
Ameen,
Yeah,
ameen, ya
they
Rabb.
support. It got. We started the crowdfunding, and
Yeah.
the response was just unbelievable.
It was before on
literally.
social media,
It was
mashallah.
unbelievable. There was like £50,000 worth of pre-orders and sponsorships of this book
Mashallah.
within 3 months, and that really propelled me to want to publish it as quickly as possible. And it just showed that the ummah, does want to learn.
Yeah.
It does want to
Yeah.
learn. It does have a craving and appetite to know about the Prophet ﷺ and to go on that journey, and they're willing to put their money to that cause as well. So it made me realize that there's voids, there's gaps that we need to fill, and this is one of them. That for people that don't read, and the younger audience, the younger adults, they need literature that is basically in line with the kind of stuff they're already reading, like the Harry Potters and all the rest of it. So
Easily
they all-
digestible,
Yeah.
readability.
but not just that. It's not just the language. It's also about the style. So storytelling is a science. There's some of the best speakers in the world. They're great on account of their ability to tell stories, take people on a journey, help them imagine things. And there is a science behind that. I only came to learn that when I started writing this book. Now, from back then, it was like, it needs to have a beginning, middle, and end. As long as it's got that, it's a story. No, Habibi, man. Hollywood, Netflix, people love it because they have cracked the science of storytelling. That's basically
Absolutely.
it. And my journey on storytelling started in Surah Yusuf, because the first verse is about he saw that dream, the 11 stars
Yep.
and the sun and the moon prostrating, and that dream in storytelling is actually called foreshadowing. It's when you tell the end of the story in the beginning.
It's powerful.
Yeah, and
It's
it
really
unfolds with the anticipation brewing in the back of the mind of the reader that how is this going to
Sounds
end up
like
like
with
that?
the
Because he's in a well right now. How is he
Yeah.
going to? Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a twist. There's a turn. And then when it goes full circle,
Crescendo.
then it's like Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
That's the Quran. That's the Quran. So we've got everything. Like I said to you before, it's all there in the Quran. You just have to read. You have to read it with an open heart, sincere heart. Allah will show you things that you didn't think were possible. and give you clarity that you didn't think was achievable.
So let's quickly just go over it. So 3 books in round about 2 years.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3. This is the one which you thought would never come into fruition. Had it not been for Abdullah Ahmed, book 1.
Yeah.
This took you
To write 18 months, I think.
18 months.
Yeah.
This took you,
At about a year,
and this took,
6 months.
wow. So we went from a year and a half.
But this one, I had to get help. I had a writing coach
Okay.
that I used the service of a writing coach to help me, a Muslim sister in South Africa.
Wow. And this is from someone who never envisaged writing books.
I didn't read books. I
Or
don't
read
know.
books. Okay, so
That's young. I'm ashamed to say that, by the way. I'm not saying it proudly. I'm ashamed to say that. I didn't used to be a bookworm when I was young.
So tying this into the themes that we've spoken about, right? The things that we should be busying ourselves with, and the kind of things that we shouldn't be busying ourselves with.
Yeah.
Last piece of nasiha from you to our listeners, to our viewers, brothers and sisters, from a time productivity point of view.
Yeah.
Right? Because we spoke about, when we opened the podcast, about masculinity, and we spoke about these concepts and how, in fact, if we go back to the Quran, what does Allah say about the men and women which He Azawajal praised in the Quran?
Yeah.
So naturally, for us to find that, if you're not already connected, you need to connect. If you're connected but not connected enough, increase that connection. So this is essentially about a time of a matter of productivity.
Yeah.
What would your concluding advice be to the Muslims in terms of how they manage their time, and how, in fact, managing your time with productive things that will benefit you can, in fact, actually address those problems which we actually discussed throughout the podcast?
Yeah, no, it's very true, actually. So there's like one main thing. If you manage to crack that, then everything else starts to fall in line in some form or shape. I think it's the vision. As a Muslim, woman or man, you need to have vision in life. What do you want to achieve? And that vision needs to have alignment with the akhirah. This is one important thing that people don't connect together. So they'll have an ambition, they'll have a vision, but it's only about business, for example, or getting rich or becoming popular or something else. But it doesn't align itself with the akhirah. It doesn't align itself to getting the highest position in paradise. So you need to think of a vision, and you need to think, how is that going to be aligned with my fate in the akhirah? As for the vision itself, one size does not fit all. It's every single person's talent and skill that they have. They create their vision based on that. And if you don't know what that is, which a lot of brothers and sisters say, I don't know what that is right now. So don't worry. All you do is you commit yourself to a life of learning and worship to the best of your ability, and Allah will open that door for you. And I say that from experience, because these 3 books here, I never ever envisaged myself writing at all, never mind 3 books. And the reason I managed to write is quite interesting, because you might be thinking, okay, he wasn't good at English, he never used to read, how's this guy writing books? Yeah. So there was a class I started with Sheikh Haytham, may Allah preserve him, called Zad Ma'ad. It's a study of a seerah book by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. It was in my local masjid, and it lasted for 6 years. In those 6 years, I became the note taker of the class, and my notes were used to give exams to the students as well. So what happened is that I started becoming the guy that I used to write, and taking notes, and I'm researching. I could pull this hadith from here, pull this ayah from here, make sure it makes sense. The grammar's all over the place. Like, what am I doing? I don't know when I'm supposed to use who's and who is with apostrophe. I don't know anything. So over the course of 6 years, I kid you not, I'm learning English grammar because I'm taking notes on this seerah dars.
SubhanAllah, that's crazy.
And only through those 6 years I realized how bad my English was, because I did pharmacy. You don't need to know.
So you did pharmacy?
Yeah, I don't need to know how to write, because that's all scientific stuff, is like, clinical trials and all the rest of it. So, but even though I was in uni at that time, I realized, my English is so poor. So over the course of these years, I learned how to write. But I didn't know that would become the means for me to do this later on. So you don't need to have the grand vision with details all filled in. You just know that Allah will open that door for you, as long as you commit yourself to learning and having that desire to do something for the sake of Allah, wherever that is.
A random one, only because you mentioned it. So you did pharmacy in university?
Yeah, I still work as a pharmacist.
Oh, you're still a pharmacist?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
You want some drugs?
No. Which ones you got? So it was an absolute pleasure having you on.
It's my pleasure.
No,
Honestly, it was. Yeah,
Honestly,
alhamdulillah.
I
May
thought-
Allah accept it.
Ameen,
Ameen,
ameen.
ya
Barakallahu feek.
And thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and lots to take from, brothers and sisters and friends.
Absolutely.
I hope you all enjoyed and benefited from today's discussion as much as we did. Please remember to subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. You can find this show on all the major audio platforms. Please look into investing some money into buying these beneficial books, which I'm sure you can find on Amazon.
Yep. All of them on Amazon.
All of them on Amazon. Let me just show you one more time. In chronological order of when they were written and published, we got The Heart of the Quran. We have The Kingdom of God. And we have The Simple Seerah. Brothers and sisters, we spend a lot of money on many things which quite frankly don't really benefit us in this life, and many times they don't benefit us in the hereafter either. So invest a bit of money. If you think that you were affected by some of the topics of discussions today, and you probably thought, well, how does buying these books reconnect to those problems? Well, it was there. We spoke about it. If we accept as Muslims the answers are in the Quran and the Sunnah, we need to connect with those source texts. And one of the ways in which we invest in it is to actually find literature that will help us connect with it. And I can't find any better example in terms of shorter, bite-sized readability literature than what Ustadh Asim has written. And of course, try your utmost best to connect with the actual Mus'haf itself. Brothers and sisters, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Blood Brothers Podcast, a 5 Pillars production.